Welcome to the Hockey Writers Blackhawks Banter, a weekly show with our top Chicago Blackhawks writing crew, bringing you the latest news, rumors, trades, player grades, game results, and much more. From training camp to the playoffs, from Chelsea Dagger to the Madhouse on Madison, our team covers everything that happens with the Hawks. So get comfortable, grab a beverage. It's time for some Blackhawks Banter. Blackhawks Banter.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to episode 45 of Blackhawks Banter, where our hockey writers crew debates everything Chicago Blackhawks. If you don't already, be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel and follow us on Twitter, or you can listen to us on your favorite podcast preferred platform. We are pretty excited around here today because, of course, training camp is in full swing, and it started this past Thursday. Seemed like an endless summer, but the players are back on the ice, and there is plenty to talk about. We have our usual crew here tonight. We have Shaun Filippelli, our friend from Canada, our favorite hockey historian, Greg Boysen, and the lovely and just a tad bit younger than me, Brooke LoFurno. I am Gail Kauchak, and we have a great show tonight. So let's get right to it. We have talked at length in the past few weeks about Blackhawks prospects who are on the bubble to make the team, and also veteran depth players that might be on the outside looking in. So I'd like to go in a little bit different direction here for our first question. There are also several players that, as long as they are healthy, are really basically locks to make the team. Let's face it, Alex DeBrincat, Patrick Kane, Connor Murphy, Marc-Andre Fleury, they're all expected, if they're healthy, to obviously be on the opening night roster. So of these plethora of players, pick one of them that you think is going to have an especially strong season this season, 2021-22, and tell us why. And let's go ahead and start with Shaun. Take it away.
Listen, you named him as your first lock for a reason, and I'm going to go straight to Alex DeBrincat. And I know it doesn't sound like much of a hot take. Everyone's expecting this guy to produce. We know what he can do. We've seen what he can do the past few seasons. He had a great rebound from his sluggish 19-20 year, as was predicted, as we all hoped. But it's not just that I think he's going to produce the way we've seen him through 2021. I think he's going to elevate, and I think we can anticipate even more out of him. And that's what excites me about a player like DeBrincat, because as good as he already is, I expect more. I think he will be able to do more. He already hit a 40-goal mark in his second year, and I think he's going to go even higher. I mean, now he's got an even more talented support system around him, a team that's well more poised to compete, and he's just getting into stride. So to me, it's not just that I'm saying to bring it because I think he's going to perform. I think he's going to elevate beyond levels that we've expected or seen to this point.
Yeah, that's an awesome choice. I mean, what is he? Is he 23 still, or is he 24? And he's going to be he's going to be broken, unleashed with Patrick Kane. So yeah, definitely looking forward to that. Brooke, who would you pick as a kind of a breakout player?
Besides those three, the first name that came to mind is Tyler Johnson. And you guys might start laughing because once I get on a player kick, I usually will talk about it for like weeks until a new player kind of comes to mind. But I don't know, like in training camp, they seem to have that DeBrincat, Johnson, Kane line going right now, and they haven't really strayed from it. And I know that doesn't really mean much because it's training camp, but I don't know. It seems like there could be something there that Colleton likes that he's sticking with. So if that's the case, and that's going to be the line opening night, then that's a huge difference from where he came from, which was fourth line Tampa Bay, going to like the top six. That's a huge difference there. And maybe he'll thrive in that role. I don't know. And especially if he's playing with Kane and DeBrincat, I mean, those are two very big playmakers that will elevate anyone's game. So something tells me that he'll be a pretty good fit here. Like I said, it sounds really good on paper. It might not turn out okay, but for some reason that's just sticking out to me as he's a player that I think could, he has a lot of versatility, and I kind of like that about him. He can just kind of slot in anywhere. So I think he's due for a big year.
Yeah, a lot of people are not real happy about him being on the first line and don't think that that's a good place. But I don't know. Like you said, he's got a lot of versatility, and in the name of balance, and he wins those faceoffs, so gets possession for that line. I could see him having a good year as well. I think that's kind of a good sleeper pick. Greg, how about you?
I went with Connor Murphy on this one. not necessarily a breakout year, because I think all of us here in Chicago know what he brings to the table every night. We know he's reliable, solid defenseman, and let's face it, he's been the best defenseman we've had in combined the last 3 seasons. But I think he gets overlooked on a national level. I don't think he gets enough credit for how good he is, and it took him a little while to win over the fan base here in Chicago when he came, and that wasn't because of how he played, but just more of how he was acquired. Being acquired for Gail's all-time favorite player and a beloved Nicholas Jarmelson. It's hard to win fans over because you're just for the fact that you're not Nicholas Jarmelson, people are automatically going to be against you. But he took some time, won over the fans, and I think nationally he gets overlooked basically just because the overall defense for the Hawks has not been good since he's been here, but it hasn't been his fault. So now this year. Now that you have a Seth Jones, now that you have a Jake McCabe, hopefully a healthy Calvin DeHaan, you've got reliable, really good defensemen on all your pairings right now. So the defense should improve, and that should help him individually as well. He's been paired a lot in camp with Riley Stillman, but that's nothing to really set in stone at this point. But if the defense plays together as a whole, and you've got better, more reliable defensemen as opposed to either guys on the tail end of their career that maybe aren't as good as they once were, and a whole lot of inexperience. That was a lot of slack Murphy had to pick up the last couple of years. Now I don't think he's going to have to pick up all that slack, and he can focus on his job, and he's going to be even better than what we've seen. And I think he's going to start to get recognized across the league as a pretty darn good defenseman.
Now, don't forget that a couple shows back, I actually picked him as my favorite American player. So he's won me over, even if he came after, from John Emerson. So definitely, I think that with some of the pressure taken off of him, we're going to see him hopefully thrive. Okay, so my pick actually for a star of the star players is Dominik Kubalik. I just have a sneaking suspicion we're going to see some good things out of him this year. He had such a phenomenal rookie season, as you all remember, 2019-20, 30 goals and 46 points. And most of that production occurred after he was put on the line with Jonathan Toews. It seems like this year that it's kind of a no-brainer to put them together, and I think that Kubalik is going to benefit mostly from that and reap the rewards of that. Okay, so last season, 17 goals, second on the team, 38 points, which was third on the team. So that to me proves that his rookie season was no fluke. And if you remember, we all complained last year that he wasn't being utilized correctly, wasn't getting enough minutes. He was getting played on the third line. And I think that had to do a lot with balance and with having a lot of younger players. And now this year they're going to have a lot more depth. And I really do think that he's going to be integral and on that top six and really be able to take off this year. So let's hope I'm right. Let's hope we're all right? All right, next I'd like to turn to a question that came from one of our viewers. It's kind of an intriguing question, and I'd kind of like to get your guys' take on it. So this is from Steve. I was hoping your panel could give us your thoughts on if a player coach could work in the NHL, most specifically for the Blackhawks. Who would you pick? So Brooke, let's start with you. What do you think about a player coach?
I have actually never once thought about this scenario in my life. So when I saw this viewer question, I was like, I kind of like this. I've never thought about it. But my first thought was, no, I don't see this ever happening for the NHL. And I think it's because the game is so detail-oriented now with all these different aspects, power plays, penalty kills, just the whole game scheme in general. I think that would be very hard to kind of go back and forth between coaching and playing unless you're someone like Patrick Kane where, I guess you can do both simultaneously so well that you can't even, but I just don't see it. I think it'd just be too complicated. But if it were to happen, someone that came to mind for a coach is Dylan Strome. And again, this might sound weird, But I know that a lot of people might have thought Toews or something, but this is kind of off the grid because I do remember a pick on a teammate video for Blackhawks TV where Alex DeBrincat was talking about how Strome is a very big stats guy. Is really big into stats and points and all that kind of stuff. And I know that doesn't mean much in coaching, but I don't know. Maybe that could be something maybe for him in the future if he chooses to go that route. So, but yeah, all in all, I don't see it happening, but it is fun to think about.
I think I remember that too. They were saying that like him and Kane would talk all the time and they were kind of like the nerds together like that respect. So
Yeah.
who knows? It's fun to like speculate. So anyway, player coach, Greg, what do you think?
I don't think it's something we're gonna ever see again. It was something that happened not often, but it happened a lot in the early days of the NHL, 20s and 30s. You saw it quite a bit. The last guy to ever do it was Charlie Burns. He did it 1969-70 season for the Minnesota North Stars, just for one season. So it hasn't been done in nearly 50 or over 50 years. For a reason, many reasons. The Blackhawks actually had one of their own. Sid Abel, who was a Hall of Famer with the Red Wings, actually was a player coach here for 2 seasons when he came over to the Blackhawks in 1952-53, and then again in 53-54. So you're talking nearly 70 years since it's been done with the Blackhawks. It's just, to be honest with you, I think those teams in the 20s and 30s did it simply to save money. You don't have to pay 2 salaries. You can pay one guy to do both. You're going to do it, especially back in those days where, you know, didn't have 21,000 seat arenas charging $100 a ticket. So just today's game is it's too difficult to handle that. You've got too many, the rosters are too big to begin with. There's too many moving parts within a game. There's no way somebody can do that. You know, and just for fun, who would you specifically pick for the Blackhawks? That's a tough call because I know Jonathan Toews would probably be like the first guy that people say, but I don't know if he maybe could be a good coach. But when you look at the coaches throughout the NHL and the AHL too, there's not a lot of star players who turn into coaches. It's usually your grinder guys, your guys that had to listen to a lot of coaching just to play professionally. You don't see the superstars become great coaches. Gretzky tried it and it wasn't very good. Well, how's Wayne Gretzky going to coach somebody? He never listened to a coach a day in his life. He was just naturally the best ever. So that could be said for a lot of sports. You don't see the stars who are just naturally gifted become coaches because they don't know how to coach, because they just strapped on a pair of skates and were great just because. So far as a Blackhawk goes, maybe one of those, like, you know, 3rd, 4th line guys, maybe a Ryan Carpenter be a coach down the line, something like that.
I like that.
Gail's other new favorite player.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like Ryan Carpenter. But I did mean to ask you about Cody Franson with the Rockford IceHogs, because wasn't there kind of the thought process that he might do that? And I don't even know if he's with the team this season.
No, he's not with the team. I forget where he went. He's still in the AHL, but he signed elsewhere. A lot of the guys last year called him a coach on the ice, but he wasn't officially a coach. But just because he's been such a veteran and been everywhere, and to have a team full of 19, 20-year-old defensemen, he was really good for them. And I definitely could see Cody will be a coach if he wants to be, because when he talked after games, it was like interviewing a head coach. He's got it in him. He's got that, whatever it is, he's got that coaching gene. So I totally could see him when he finally decides he's done playing. I think Cody Franson will jump right into probably an assistant job somewhere in AHL and work his way up.
I'm disappointed he's not with the IceHogs. That's a bummer. But okay, moving on, more player coach talk. Shaun, what do you think? What do you think?
It's hard to add much more than what's already been said in terms of not thinking it would ever really pan out in this day and age, in this era of the game. You know, as has already been alluded to, the reality is all these athletes and personnel are at the top of their game, so to speak. They all have a very finite and isolated focus on what their role is. So it's hard to imagine a break from that, because it could just cause a disarray as far as who's doing what at any given moment and whether they can be as effective as they could be otherwise. So I don't think it fits in today's game. However, an interesting thought could be where, you know, we always push when a team is in rebuild mode, like we thought the Blackhawks were last season. If they were going to bring in a veteran goalie, not necessarily a Marc-Andre Fleury, because now they're expecting to compete, but let's look to next season with Marc-Andre Fleury. His term being up this year, let's say he's ready to retire, but the Hawks convince him, hey, you know what, we'll pay you a couple million, but stay on board and, you know, be our goalie coach moving forward. So maybe he can still have a role where it's a diminished role, knowing he's not going to get into a lot of games, but he still has that mentor goalie coach responsibility. That's sort of a scenario I could see working out, because it's a little bit different than a player that you expect to be in that lineup, whether a top or bottom six, where that goalie can still be there, be right in the game, be ready to go if he's needed, but his main focus is just mentoring those youth and getting that big workload under them, like a Lankinen in the seasons to come. So that's really the only scenario I could sort of make sense of. I can't really imagine a player doing it, but I could get behind a goalie who's nearing the end of their career, but still fresh in the game doing that role.
Well, I'm so not surprised that you're going to take this goalie approach, but you know what? That really does kind of make sense, because, you know, goalies aren't the ones that play all the time. You can kind of have that back and forth in that tandem. So I could see that. And I know we pretty much exhausted this subject, but I'm just going to add my 2 cents here. Our very own Joel Quenneville actually was an assistant coach to Mark Crawford in 1991, while he was actually still a player, St. John Maple Leafs of the AHL. So he had already played in the NHL. Pretty much his career was done. They brought him on the AHL as a player, but really, I thought that was kind of interesting. And if we're going to be doing the whole fantasy, who would do this here? I would speculate. Okay, so what about if Marian Hossa came back in a coaching role with the Blackhawks? But he doesn't really exactly seem like the best personality for coaching. He's more of a lead by example kind of guy. So I could see him, you know, trying to explain it and then just getting fed up with explaining it. So he hops over the boards and shows everybody how to do it. And of course, I'm just saying that because I would so love to see Marian Hossa play again, right? So
Me too.
that's just my 2 cents about that. So anyway, right? Wouldn't that be the greatest thing ever? We can all dream. Okay, here. So Mark Lazarus of The Athletic just recently wrote an article arguing that the Blackhawks should practice load management with their veteran stars. We know who he's talking about, Jonathan Toews and Patrick Kane. Obviously, Jonathan Toews missed all last season with complications from chronic immune response syndrome. And Kane admitted on the first day of training camp that he's still dealing with some mysterious nagging ailment that has been plaguing him. So having them take a night off here and there to rest their body could be an option, but let's face it, it's not exactly the kind of thing that hockey players embrace. It's either all or nothing in this culture. So I'm curious of what you guys think about limiting or practicing load management with Toews and Kane. Why don't you go ahead, Greg?
Yeah, I'm all for it. Especially with Toews early on, you got to see what you got. You got to see how he responds. He hasn't played hockey in over 2 years, so you know you can be conditioned and be in the gym and all that stuff as good as you want to be, but getting your everything back into place on the ice, your timing, your hand-eye coordination, that's a completely different beast. I'm all for it. These guys aren't getting any younger. And, you know, as I said, Toews, we got to see how he bounces back. And Kane, you know, he wasn't Patrick Kane down the stretch for whatever reason. He says he has a nagging injury. Was he tired? Did he stop kind of, you know what? I don't really care so much anymore. I mean, he's been known to do that from time to time. So, keeping them fresh early on could go a long way come March and April if this team is competing for playoff spots, which they are expected to be. When I was reading this article, I was like, man, this is good stuff. Has anybody shown it to Jeremy Colleton? Because that's going to be the main. We can talk about that all, but it's going to come down to him. And we know he loves playing Patrick Kane double shifts. Anytime the offense is struggling, they're down a goal, whoever the right winger on the fourth line is, good luck getting on the ice because Patrick Kane's going to take all your shifts. And I'm sure Kane is all for it and would double, triple shift every game if he could. But let's face it, we can't get away with doing that too often. So hopefully with a better, deeper team this year, you won't need to double shift him very often. And maybe you find some time to Save him a minute here, a minute there throughout the season. Maybe a second power play unit actually starts scoring some goals so he doesn't have to play 100% of the power play time. I know I'm getting way too greedy right now, so we'll see. But I'm all for it. Let's face it. They're as far as hockey goes, they're old guys now. We gotta treat them as such.
Okay, Shaun, what do you have to add to this?
Yeah, you know what? It makes perfect sense. It's hard to add. I mean, Greg said it best, but the reality is we preached all last season, most of us on this panel, let alone throughout, Blackhawks fandom, that Duncan Keith shouldn't have been playing as much as he was. And it's for all the same reasons. It's not that he couldn't have managed the workload. It's not that he wasn't able to be effective. It's not that he's not skilled, just like Toews and Kane. They can still play this game. They're still capable. They're still going to be effective, and they're still going to be relied upon. But if this coaching staff learns how to put players who are potentially past their prime or going to be nearing being past their prime in more opportune situations to succeed, it's going to benefit those players and the team. There's a cast around these players who are all itching to get into more of the game, have more of an impact, and have more of an influence. The coaching staff needs to recognize that. So it's not that they can't still lean on players like Kane and Toews or still leverage what they can do or what they can bring or the success that they've already attained. It's that they have to find that happy medium and that balance between letting the players like the DeBrincats and the Murphys and all these other kids who are there to prove themselves and to really get into the game. They need to let that happen. And in order to let that happen, they need to ease off from players like Kane and Toews. In doing so, the bonus is going to be that the Canes and Toews of the world are going to be more fresh and they're going to be more ready and more able to have a greater impact when it's actually needed. So, of course, they absolutely need to ease off a little bit. Doesn't mean sit these guys, but be more strategic about when they play them.
Okay, well said. Brooke, would you agree?
Yes, I like the idea of load management a lot. And I think I like it because of what you guys all said, but something that sticks out to me is this is the one thing I didn't like about Colleton is that he was double shifting Kane when he really didn't need to double shift him. Like he did that like in games against Detroit last season when they were struggling, in Columbus when they were struggling. Like I didn't feel like you needed to double shift him against teams that are really kind of bad in that sense. Or like even towards the end where they weren't in the playoff picture and they were double shifting him. I was like, okay, I don't know how this is helpful because they're not going to make the playoffs. So my thing is kind of like, I understand what Colleton was doing with Kane because it was like without him, who else is going to produce the way he does? But now, like Greg said, they have some more players that can produce. But my thing is if they're in a spot like where they're like knocking on playoffs door and they're only a couple points out of that wild card spot and stuff, then yeah, I get it. You are going to double shift those guys. But I feel like, especially during the season, if they're playing against a team that's really bad or I don't know, just is struggling in a lot of areas, and I don't think there's a reason to overplay them in that sense. I feel like you should only really do that when you really need to in dire situations, which are games like that, like the pre-playoff kinds of things. So yeah, I feel like maybe if Colleton eased off a little bit, maybe Kane wouldn't be dealing with something that he's dealing with right now, but maybe he'll think about that now that this is all happening and now that they got a better team this season. But yeah, I'm all for it.
Okay, I'm going to play the devil's advocate a little bit here. I know you guys make tons of sense, and I really thought that I was a progressive hockey fan, but I don't know, the old school kind of comes out with me here. There's something that's different about hockey. In the NBA, they do this kind of as a way of life, and in soccer, they're always flopping. And but there's something about the hockey culture that makes it such an excellent sport. They players have no desire to go less than 100%, and it's in the makeup of their culture to just play every game every night. And so, are they a little bit crazy for this? Yes. Are they probably should be looking out for their bodies? And I'm all for watching out and all the research that's come up with CTE and brain trauma and watching the hits and all that kind of thing. So I don't know why I have a bit of a problem with this. I just feel like hockey is it's just you just what you do, and I know that that's bad, and maybe that culture is supposed to change. But are Toews and Kane going to embrace this? Toews is going to want to be out there as long as he's feeling good. He's going to want to be winning those faceoffs and leading the team. And Kane, if he can win a couple more games by double shifting and pull out a few more that could get them over the hump to the playoffs, then they're going to do that. So I don't know. I could see it happening, but maybe they can figure out a way around it. Maybe they can do what they did with Marian Hossa and just, say, hey, take all the practices off you want and just come to play the game. So I don't know. We'll see what happens this year. I'm sure it'll be a bit of a change. So we are a little bit more than halfway through our show. We've got a couple more topics to talk about. Just a reminder to subscribe to the Hockey Writers on YouTube. Visit thehockeywriters.com regularly for all our great content. You can follow us individually with our Twitter names on the screen. So let's move on to our next topic, another kind of fun topic, a little bit offbeat and fun. On the first day of training camp, it was noted that Blackhawks players were having some trouble with their pair of brothers and nicknames for them. So you've got Seth and Caleb Jones and Kirby and Colton Dach. Okay, so let's get a little bit creative. What nicknames might you propose for Seth, Caleb, Kirby, or Colton? Shaun, let's go ahead and start with you.
Well, first of all, to further that hockey players are not very good at nicknames, I can attest to that because growing up playing the game, I was never one to really fall into that and just never really bought into it. So certainly not that good at it myself, but I certainly tried here. As is often the case and as I'm often called out for, I went with a little bit of a Canadian-American theme here. So with the American Jones brothers, I thought, why not go straight to a cult classic, Wayne's World? Some of the biggest Blackhawks fans in Hollywood. And I'm thinking Seth can be Wayne and Caleb can be Garth. And then for the Canadian Dach brothers, I went with another cult classic, the McKenzie brothers, Kirby being Bob and Colton being Doug. And to me, I think it just makes sense. Keep things light. They're going to be, it's going to be a very serious season. They're going to want to win at all costs. They're going to need to perform. There's going to be a lot of pressure on this team. So why not keep things light in the dressing room? Find a way to pair these tandems up together, being that it is a unique situation with brothers on the team. So that just seemed like a nice fit to me.
Well, it's definitely creative. You're not even like going off of their first name or their last name. You like got the whole theme going on. I love it. Okay, Brooke, what ideas do you have?
I actually dreaded this question, and I feel like I shouldn't because I felt like you guys would probably come up with good ones. And Shaun, you did. And I have two brothers, and I've been surrounded by sports my whole life. I should be better at this. But something that came to mind was about Seth Jones. And I remembered seeing a piece about him when he was in Columbus, and he said how much he loves art. He loves museums, loves galleries, loves art. That's just a hobby of his. So he picked a good spot in Chicago because we have so much great art. We have a great art history. But so my nickname kind of that came to mind was the artist for him. I don't know, maybe Caleb, his brother, can build off of that. The artist and I don't know, something that can go with it. I don't know, but it's fun. That's what I came up with.
And I'm immediately turning it back to what, just going with the E or the ER, right? Artsy, even though he's not. All right, Greg, it's your turn.
Yeah, hockey, I mean, those were great ideas by Shaun, but hockey players are not that creative. I've been around enough hockey teams, locker rooms, and we've all heard it on post-game coach. Nicknames are usually just add a Y, an ER, or an S to a name, and there you go. And somebody, I forget who one of the guys on the Hawks, it might have been Murphy or Dahan, one of them said, we're calling both Caleb and Seth Jonesy, so they don't even have a different name for them. So I don't think we're gonna have to really worry about two names for the Dach brothers for a while. I think Colton's a year or two away, so call him whatever this time around. I don't think he's going back to juniors this year. But as far as Caleb and Seth goes, you can give Jonesy to Seth since he's the older brother, and I think you can call Caleb Kales, like the vegetable, and then he would automatically become Jonathan Toews' favorite player because you know how much Jonathan Toews loves his vegetables. So then everybody wins. He can be his little under protege. Call him Kales, and then Toews will probably notice him for the first time.
Okay, when you brought this up on the preview post, I thought that was just awesome. That's awesome. I so hope that they do that. I mean, obviously they won't, but that's it's perfect. Okay, so I'll just say I'll round it off with kind of my idea. My first inclination with the Jones brothers was after Dr. Seuss, the classic book Cat in the Hat, calling them Thing 1 and Thing 2, but of course, who wants to be called Thing 1 and Thing 2? Not sure if Jonesy is much better, but Seth did say when he was interviewed, I think it was on day 2 or 3 of training camp that he already decided. Then he told Caleb, I'm the older brother, so I'm Jonesy. So by default, does that make Caleb Joneser? Jonesy. No, but honestly, I think Kales is just perfect. Regarding Kirby and Colton, I wrote that the nickname for Kirby was Docker, but is he Curbs? Does anybody know what does anybody know?
Yeah, no.
I don't know. It's probably Docker, knowing
Yeah, Docker.
Yeah,
the
Docker.
way it goes.
But if it is Curbs, then I kind of like that because I honestly think he should be Kermit, and then they could have Colton be Colt, Kermit and Colt. Again, you guys, we're not very creative either, so I guess the circle of bad hockey nicknames continues. But I still think Kales. We gotta. That's a.
All right, we're gonna. That's what we're gonna call them all season. We'll see if it sticks.
Yeah, exactly. Our show's basically a recommendation for the team.
They've taken things that have gone viral before. I mean, Shawfax, that hashtag wasn't started by the Blackhawks. That was started by the guys over at Hockey Night, and then the Blackhawks. I don't want to say stole it, but they borrowed it without permission.
Well, yeah, and I think
but we can get it going. That's our mission this year on the Hockey Writers Blackhawks crew is get Kales to be the official nickname of.
Love it.
Yeah.
And my old editor that I used to work with, he started hashtag Lamont native Scott Darling. I think he did. Maybe it was, but that was another one that kind of went viral. Everybody was
hashtag Kales. That's what we're going for all season.
Hashtag Kales. I love it. Okay, let's move on. This is our final question, you guys. So everybody that's hung in there with us. Okay, let's keep this final question open-ended. As we all know, we are full swing in the training camp. Started last Thursday. They practiced Thursday, Friday, Saturday. Took Sunday off. Also practiced Monday and now Tuesday. So what are your thoughts from camp so far? Talk about competition, standout players, any surprises or predictions. What do you think, Brooke?
Well, I wrote a post about this for day 1, and it seems like that is kind of still in my brain, even as the days have gone by, because it seems like a lot of it's unchanged. First is Hagel. The fact that he's still on the top lines kind of surprises me a little bit. I thought that maybe he's more of a bottom 6 player, but he seems to be sticking on the top 6, which I think is interesting. I don't hate it, but I think it's interesting that they think they want to really expand his role. So I think that might stick, and I'm okay with it for now. We'll see how it goes, but I think it's interesting how much they view him. And we all view very highly of Hagel. So like I said, I'm okay with that for now. But the other thing is Kalynuk. I know we talked about this maybe a couple shows ago about who would you rather have, Ian Mitchell or Wyatt Kalynuk. But it seems like they really are taking Wyatt Kalynuk and really pushing him to kind of be on the team opening night, which I'm okay with. I think they started him out with Dahan as the second pairing, and they were rotating him in and out again today. So I think he's the one that's sticking. I think that's a very interesting thing to follow. But I like both of those things, but I think it's very interesting.
Yeah, those are both definitely good points to pinpoint. Greg, what can you take away from training camp?
I'm not really going to talk about anything particular to what the Hawks are doing. This is more kind of a message to hockey Twitter out there or whatever social media platform you are. Stop freaking out over the line changes and defensive pairings the first week of training camp. That's not just for Blackhawk fans. It's all over. Everybody thinks that just because when the Blackhawks have over 60 guys in camp right now. So this is when you play around and find out things. Brooke talked earlier about the Brinkett, Johnson, Kane line. I'm not particularly a fan of that. I mean, I'm a guy that if you've been watching Prospect Corner on the YouTube channel, subscribe so you never miss an episode. You know that I'm not I don't put size as a hindrance against guys. I don't like the stigma that just because you're under 6 feet tall, you're not big enough to play. But all three of those guys together might be pushing the envelope there. You might need a little size. I love the line. I think it was Scott Powers said when they first put that line together, he wrote, their line's going to score a lot of goals, but they're going to have a lot of trouble getting on roller coasters. I thought that was a great line. So, but again, it's been a couple days in training camp. That's a good one. I wish I thought of that one, but it doesn't matter what they do in training camp. It doesn't matter what they do in preseason. This is when you test those things out. I'm sure they have an idea of where they want to go, but they just want to play some different combinations out and see what works. And maybe you change our mind, make us put you up here with this guy, or maybe we'll take you, whatever. This is how you work this out. This is all just practice. It's just leading up to opening night. So my message for Blackhawk fans and anybody who's watching this, no matter who your team is, it's okay. It's okay. It will all work out. Guys will get where they need to be eventually. Don't freak out. It's only September. They haven't even played a preseason game yet. Let some roster cuts happen. Let them get down to a manageable guys in camp, and then we'll see where we're at.
New show, Deep Breathing with Greg.
Okay, well, he did talk us off a ledge there, because it is true that people just get a little bit worked up on, oh my gosh, this is what it's going to be. So anyway, Shaun, what are your thoughts?
Brooke touched on this topic in her takeaways piece, and I appreciate that in terms of Marc-Andre Fleury looking quick and ready to go and like the former Vezina winner. But I'm going to take it in a different direction. What's been nice to see is it's been reported and shown that he's been visibly upset and visibly irritated when he's not performing up to his standard. And this is still training camp. He hasn't even gotten into a game, hasn't even been in front of a home crowd yet. So the fact that he's this fired up this early on is a great sign for the Blackhawks, because, again, he came over in a messy trade situation. We wondered if he was going to even report to Chicago, finally decided to, and now he's this mad letting in a goal in essentially, preseason practice. If for nothing else, that bodes well for the passion that we should expect from him all year long, which is what he's shown throughout his career. And I'm happy to see and happy to expect that we're going to see it again. And it should really help to motivate those around him from the defense outward. They should realize that this is what it takes to win. He's a proven winning player in this league, and this is the kind of intensity that this entire team is going to need the whole way through. So that's been fun to see.
Yeah, I think that Fleury is just a keeper. I think he's going to be so valuable on this team, on the ice and off it, as a leader as well, and as somebody to kind of keep the locker room light. He seems there's been a couple write-ups about how he's just quite the prankster. And I really liked the way that they had some quotes from Lankinen today. Kevin Lankinen was back in practice, and he was talking about how he's just really, of course he's going to say this, right? But he's, if you have a chance to be mentored and learn from Marc-Andre Fleury, you're going to be pretty excited about that, and he knows that his time it will come, and that Fleury's not going to be here forever. So I kind of liked to hear the positive attitude that Lankinen's having with everything. And then just a couple other things I want to bring up from training camp. Of course, this is no surprise, but I'm sure it must be very humbling for Dylan Strome to be, he's definitely on the bubble. He's been playing in the second group, I think, for the last couple practices now. So it'll be interesting to see where that goes. And I'm just intrigued with the defense. I think we had talked about, obviously we know that Seth Jones and Murphy are kind of your anchors on the right. Although Greg, I think, wasn't it you that said that you thought that they could be a really great pairing together as well.
Yeah, but they both play the same side, so that wouldn't,
But you know that they're going to be out there on the ice together, like at the end of games when the pressure's on and that kind of thing, But yeah, you're right. Probably to start things off and start games, they won't be on the same line. But right, and so we know that McCabe is probably going to be on the other side of one of them. It's interesting to see it. I'm excited. I don't want to get too excited because the defense has always been bad, and we got to work within Colleton's system, and so let's not get too excited so that we're really disappointed. But I'm intrigued and hope that we can really see some improvement this year.
Yeah.
Fingers crossed.
So this is our daily thing: to trade Dylan Strome, make him a coach. That's how I'm ending it. Or trade him or make him a coach. I don't care either one.
Brooke, you talked about how Strome loves his numbers, but he needs to focus a little bit more on getting some more of his own before.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Uber.
But poor Stromey's not being put in a situation to succeed. I mean, he was put on the fourth line when he was in the first group, and now he's in the second group. I mean, how is he supposed to show his stuff? I think they've already really kind of made that determination.
Yeah, I think he just Colleton. He's in the doghouse. We saw that with Quinville a lot. Quinville for whatever reason didn't like a lot of guys and wouldn't put them where they should be. There's a certain special little Finnish boy that plays in Carolina that comes to mind when I'm talking about that. So, maybe Strome moves on and plays with a chip on his shoulder and makes the Blackhawks regret it. But, as we love to say here on this show, we shall see.
We shall see.
Lots of moving pieces going forward. And I think it's going to take a few games into the regular season to figure out where everybody really belongs and should be. So there'll be some frustration, I think, those first few games, and which will make for some very interesting banter here on Blackhawks Banter.
We should never get a Kampf Connolly Kane line again. Never a line like that again. It should never happen.
Oh man. All right, you guys, that's going to wrap up our topics. Man, there's plenty to talk about. We could go on and on and on, couldn't we? But again, just to remind you, be sure to subscribe to the Hockey Writers on YouTube. I don't think that I mentioned this before, but we did start recently our own Twitter account. You can find it. It's at THW Blackhawks, and this is a one-stop shop, you guys, where you can watch all the Blackhawks Banter shows, and all of our articles are up there. One-stop shop. Obviously follow us all individually as well. Shaun, how many followers do we have now at THW Blackhawks?
We've hit over the 100 milestone. I think we're at 101 as we record.
Woo-hoo. All right, you guys, so sign up and follow us on that side of things too, because again, one-stop shop. So as always, thank you for joining, and be sure to don't forget to watch the preseason game this coming Wednesday against the Detroit Red Wings. That should be fun. And we're going to have tons to cover next week for you. So we will see you then.